This is a heck of a deer.
Giant Eurasian brown bear in Croatia right here.
When I set out to do the sheep slam with the muzzleloader, I had no idea what it was going to take.
It's been a while since we recorded a podcast. We didn't record our last one until the end of 2024. Had a 3-month hiatus there to where we set up the podcast studio here. So just because you haven't heard me, I haven't not been busy. Let's put it that way. I traveled up into the end. In November, I did my last trip for 2024. It was a ibex hunt with my dad into Turkey. That one went awesome. And then starts my coaching girls basketball season. Basically, from mid-November until mid-March, I'm in a gym 5 to 6 days a week, coaching, watching my youngest daughter play. It's one of the great things I get to do at this point in my life. I do occasionally slip away during season for a long weekend to film. This year I just got back from a Central Plateau whitetail hunt in Mexico. That one went awesome. But really excited, just kind of wrapping up girls basketball season here. I'll get back in the field. I've got some big trips planned for the spring. I'm starting with the biggest, going to Nepal, going after blue sheep and Himalayan tahr. This is the only spot you can hunt Himalayan tahr in their native range. You can obviously hunt them in New Zealand, but this is the one where you can hunt them in the native range. Handful of tags, so been looking forward to this one for a while. Gonna go there, and then got a trip to Namibia to go to Africa. Busy spring. Well, let's face it, busy spring, busy summer, and busy fall. That's how I like to do it. But excited to get this new podcast set up and going. First guest, Chris B. So you've had a heck of a busy year. What are highlights from 2024?
Gosh, highlights from 24. Well, I just got back, I guess, at the start of 25. I just shot a giant aoudad in West Texas. We just got back on Friday. It's funny, we were just talking about like world records and scores and stuff. It's a really big one, and everyone's telling me that I really need to like SCI score it. I don't know. It was like one of the biggest ones that the place that I was at ever killed. And that's including rifle and everything. So I shot it with a bow. So everyone's like got a score it or whatever. So that's kind of like a recent highlight.
How long were you hunting for that? Is that your first time to West Texas for aoudad?
First time, yeah. It was like way west, like pretty much close to the border, close to New Mexico, down in that corner. We killed him on day 5, and it was a tough hunt. Like it was I was way underprepared for. I was thinking like Texas, like they're like, yeah, they live in the mountains, but I was figuring. I guess I wasn't mentally figuring that it was going to be as challenging as it was. I mean, like one day we did like 250 flights of stairs and we were like ripping everywhere. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I was not expecting anything like this. And it was tough. I mean, we got our teeth kicked in. We really didn't see a big shooter ram until day 5. And we had to haul butt up the mountain to try to cut them off, and just kind of right place, right time. They were coming up. It was almost like a giant tabletop mountain, so sage flats on top, giant cliff. So we hiked up the giant cliff and then found, we went up one chute, and then there was like another chute that we kind of knew about, but also didn't kind of know about, maybe 500 yards down, that those aoudad were coming up that chute. So we kind of just hugged the rim and just intercept them just at the perfect time, where the ram that I ended up shooting was the lead ram coming up out the chute right at 30 yards. It was just perfect.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, it's a tough bow hunt. And in February, it's like post rut. So they're like kind of bachelor grouped up, and there's like big herds. Like we were seeing like herds of like 80, and there'd be like one ram in there. And it's like, gosh, it's like, how do you even go about that? Because it's like wide open, like sure you got terrain and stuff, but yeah, it was tough. They rut in October, which I didn't really know either. And I guess it's like they don't roar, but they do like, the goat noises and everything. And they're like vocalizing like crazy, fighting like crazy. So I'd love to go back at some point and do the hunt in October when they're going crazy. But it was a fun hunt. It was a very humbling hunt. And I'm super pumped that I shot one, because it would have been brutal to go home with nothing after all that work.
Their chaps are pretty crazy, aren't they? Once you actually get to see them up close.
Yeah, and they're like 300 pounds. Like they're very similar to a mountain goat.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're a sheep, but it's almost like they're almost more like a mountain goat, just where they live, the nasty rocks, um, and just how big they are, and even their bone structure. Like looking at their hooves and everything. Because when I shot mine, that was one thing I was blown away by. Is just like their bone structure and their hooves and everything
Mm-hmm.
like that. Um, Totally, it's like totally different than a deer or something like that.
They're super. I think you described it right. They're super chesty, right? They got a big chest like a mountain goat,
Yeah, the
unlike a sheep,
bones,
which
the
is
bone structure is totally different, and that's how they can get around and do crazy things.
yeah.
Pretty much rock climb.
I tell a lot of people like that want to get into sheep hunting or mounting hunting. Aoudad hunt is a perfect first step, right? Like it's sheep hunting. Generally, you get to go back and stay at a lodge throughout the day or at night, so it's not like staying on the mountain. But yet, it's still like everybody's blown away with how physical it can get down there, climbing up the
Very
mountains and
challenging.
everything. But it's awesome. I've done it a
very
couple
challenging.
times. It's sweet.
Yeah, they're saying it's like the closest. One of the guys that's been a lot, John Barclow, we were there in camp with, and he's done this hunt every year for like the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, and he loves it so much because he's like, it's literally a desert sheep hunt
Mm-hmm.
for like a quarter of the price, you know. So it's like he gets to experience a desert sheep hunt every year, sort of deal, and he loves it. But
Yep. Yep. No, it's a lot of people call it the poor man sheep hunt, right? But it's that
yeah,
instead of going up north, you still get the whole sheep experience for that. And Aoudad numbers are crazy. I'm sure you saw. I mean,
stupid.
boatloads of them. They breed like crazy. I just got back from Mexico, and they were telling me like the population in northern Mexico is getting out of control, right? Because there's no fence or anything.
Really?
So they went from Texas to northern Mexico, and now they're down there, but don't have the hunter numbers that we've got here in the States. So I mean,
Right.
they're going like crazy.
Yeah, for the amount that they were, though, it was very surprising how tough it was to find a big ram.
Hmm.
There's like great population, but gosh, there was just, I mean, we probably filtered through 100, probably 1,000 sheep before we found, you know, really the one I shot out of. It was a group of 3 rams. Those are like the 3 biggest rams we
Hmm.
saw the whole trip, and it was just like, boom, there they are. So it's not like they were everywhere, which I kind of thought.
Yeah.
Again, Texas sheep. I was like, oh, it'll be fun. It'll be
Yeah.
easy. Easier hunt. No, it was extremely hard,
Yeah.
especially with the bow.
Did the guys have an idea? Were they looking for those rams? Did they have an idea they were there?
No, we didn't really know they were there. I mean, you know how it is. Every day we kind of picked a different direction
Hmm.
until we kind of get honed in on a certain area. And another group of guys maybe saw this group of rams a couple days prior, but no, it was just like early morning. And you get around on side by sides most of the time because they have a decent road system. So we were way down low, just glassing from the truck. And we just spotted them about halfway up the mountain, making a beeline. So right at that second, we're like, all right, let's go. We didn't even bring our backpacks. He's like, grab a water. We need to go as fast as we can, like 1,000 vertical feet as fast as we can.
Uh-huh.
So we got hauled up there and then, just intercepted them. I mean, it was just like happened so fast.
Textbook stock is what it
Yeah.
sounds
I
like.
mean, it was a little bit calculated, but it also was just perfect timing. I mean, you either intercept these things or you find them bedded. But a lot of times they get in these nasty spots, and it's not like a mountain goat where they're white and they
Hmm.
stand out like a sore thumb. They blend in super well. So I mean, we spent so much time behind the glass too, because it was so hot. It was like 90 degrees during the day, so they bedded pretty fast, like within the first hour of light. So
Hmm.
if you didn't find them right away, we were just searching all day long, and that was tough.
So before we dig into other stuff from this past year, what can you tell me about the bow you were using on this hunt? Since it's early January, you probably got a secret up your sleeve. So share what you can.
No, I don't have any secrets with me right now. This is actually the time of year that I get to use the same bow. I mean, the Lift X
Hmm.
I've been using it since August. And this is my favorite time of year because like everything's dialed in. I've had a whole year to shoot
Hmm.
it. It's like I kind of just pick it up and go. Or it's like at the beginning of hunting season, you're constantly kind of tweaking things and figuring stuff out, having a new bow and having
Yeah.
everything. But Yeah, Lift X. And then this trip was actually a Ultra View trip. So we brought in one of our guys from Ultra View. We did like a big content trip for this. We're doing like a big hunt film on the Ultra View side, and then I'll have a film on my side. One of the other guys killed, so 2 out of 4 killed. Shot another really big ram with the bow. Yeah, I was using the Mathews genuine slider was kind of like the focus of this trip, which is a new 5-pin sliding system that we collaborated with for Mathews. So yeah, it was good. It was a good group of dudes. John Barclow from Sitka, me, Craig Francis, who's our new VP of marketing, and then Christian from, what is his company again? The Survival Company. Wow, I'm drawing a blank, but he's got a really fun survival company. Slogans don't die. Wow, why can't I think? Uncharted.
Okay, yeah.
Uncharted Supply Co. But he's got, man, so many like survival kits and preparation stuff. So we kind of brought in a diverse group of guys, which is really fun to share camp. Like you said, a lot of these times you go back to camp every day, and we did, because just accessing the roads and side-by-sides and everything, we were able to come back every day, which is great. But yeah, really fun trip. Fun, and it's also February. You know, you really don't get to do, you know, it's kind of like an extra hunt for the year sort of deal.
Well, it's kind of loom and gloom up here in Michigan. I know you guys get to see the sun a little bit more in Iowa, but nothing like Texas when you were there.
Yeah, well, it was about 12 degrees this morning here, so.
That's about what it is here. Brisk wind coming off the lake, just chilly.
Right off the lake.
Yeah,
you probably got a pile of snow right now.
Yep, we do. So for the Lift X, was the first hunt you went on then the mule deer hunt in Alberta with it? Or did you have one before that?
No, I'm trying to think. Lift X, Alberta. Yep, that was the first kill with it. Right out the gate. Get to go back this year again. It probably will be the first hunt with the new bow this upcoming year also, because we're going September 1.
Okay. And this was the one we picked the sweepstakes winner for. Explain that process. How excited was he to win that and get up there with you? And then let's dig in. I heard you guys saw a pile of deer up there.
Yeah. So WTA does this sweepstakes thing every year that we try to do together. And we ran it, you know, throughout the summer leading up to hunting season. And John, I think it was North Carolina, he was from, great guy. He won. We decked him out with a bow. And he showed up in camp. He was awesome. He was, it was fantastic. And that place up there in Alberta, such great guys that run that program. It's basically, it felt just like a buddy hunt, like a friend's hunt, because it's just, you know, there are a couple ranchers. It's a big family ranch, and they set aside, you know, these weeks when they have hunters, and it's just like you're jumping in the truck with them and you're going. So it's like every day we just come back and they'd make us dinner and we just hang out with them. And literally, like when we all shot our deer, we were, you know, hanging them up in one of their barns that they had trackers in, just drinking beer together. It was just like, it was a very laid back experience, which I absolutely love. And they really love hunting. I think, you know, their whole family, everyone involved, they got, you know, cousins and, you know, grandma and, you know, the whole deal. So it's very tight knit, which was awesome. And they just had a pile of deer. I remember when we showed up to camp, there was still a little bit of light. So we like shot our bows. And then we were grilling burgers or steaks or something. And we all had spot and scopes out. And we were just glassing. Cause I mean, where we were staying was pretty much right in the middle of the ranch. And we were glassing. We were finding bedded bucks. I mean, we found like at least 160-inch deer bedded that night. And just John, I think he only shot a couple deer and maybe a bear in North Carolina. So he's just like, these things are giant, which they were. I mean, they're big deer. But yeah, man, like every single day, opportunities on deer every single day. We were seeing stuff right out the gate. And that was mid-September. So it was even after they shed. And that was my one concern, because I've done quite a bit of mule deer hunting. It's like when they shed, a lot of times they disperse.
Yep.
And they start acting a little ruddy. So I was like, you know, I wonder how this is going to go, because in the past in other states and everything, it's like, sometimes that can be a little bit more challenging, but it was not well, it still was challenging, but it was not challenging finding the deer whatsoever. They were still, they were starting, you could tell a couple solo bucks here and there. But it was fantastic. Yeah,
So
the whole trip was.
So you got it set. The sweepstakes trip for this coming year, you guys are going early September, so you're going to catch them still in velvet.
A little
then.
earlier.
Yeah.
Then that was the plan. When I got done with that trip, I remember telling Nick, "Is like, I don't care how I got to get back, but I would love to get back September 1 if we can make that happen." And I was talking to those guys too, and they're like, "We can do whenever." He's like, "Just let us know." But yeah, I am so excited for September 1 because I really think we can kill a giant in velvet early, because I mean, we saw some big deer. We saw like one or two like 80s deer. I ended up killing a great deer. It was 172, 173. John killed one, I think it was 164. So two really good deer, especially with the bow. But I really think in velvet, when we do this one in velvet, we'll be able to really get on a good one. And then once you find a big one, you know how it is, but when you're in velvet like that, they're pretty small, their range, and they're right there. So if we can find a good one, I think we can really lock in and try to kill it.
What kind of fields were you hunting them in?
So it was kind of really cool terrain. You were kind of, you could see the giant mountains in the distance, 10 or 20 miles away. But we were more in like rolling grasslands and then giant alfalfa fields. So it was a good mix, alfalfa fields, and then we kind of roll into these little coulees or these little cuts. Nothing like sharp, cuts or anything like that. No big mountains, but nice stalking, rolly terrain. And you get them, coming off of the alfalfa fields, and they drop down in a coulee in bed. John was able to do a couple stalks where they're actually cutting the alfalfa fields and they were baling them. So in the whole alfalfa field, there was those big square bales or round bales. I forget what ones they were in there, but you were able to kind of like stalk around and kind of hide behind the bales to get to one bed behind the bales. And that was really cool. I didn't get to do that, but that's another added little, that to me, that's always been a dream, to shoot a deer right poking behind a hay bale and shooting it bedded right next to a hay bale. But yeah, all sorts of stuff that you can get on. Great bow hunting conditions for as far as stalking and everything like that. But yeah, no mountains. It was just like nice little rolly, grassy. We were stalking stuff in a lot of tall, shoulder high, waist high grass.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So part of the cool, to me, the real valuable part of this whole thing is you set up John's bow for this trip. He won the sweepstakes, got to hunt, also got a new Mathews bow. How did you set up his bow? Now, the big question, was it dialed in when you gave it to him?
So John was kind of a unique case because he he was already a big Mathews fan, and he already had one all dialed in. Okay. So now he ended up having two of them, which he's like, whatever. I think he was actually giving one of his bows to a friend or a buddy that was getting into hunting. So it kind of worked out that he was able to kind of give back to in that situation. But yeah, when we do these giveaways, I talk with the winner a little bit beforehand and get everything on order. And then, I set it up, in all the specs and then as close as you can, and then get it to them beforehand, and they can shoot it and decide if they want to bring it on the hunt or not. But yeah, that works out really good every time, and be able to give, the winner a little bit of extra whatever to get a bow and a full setup and everything like that. But yeah, John, he was a diehard Mathews guy, so it was good that he got that and then was able to help out one of his buddies or one of his friends too. So
that's awesome. Was this his first spot and stalk hunt?
Yeah, I believe it was. He definitely has not done it. He didn't do anything out west. I mean, he was awesome. I actually texted him a couple times since then. But yeah, I mean, it was literally, John was great. It was a fun time. And yeah, I mean, that was his biggest buck he's ever shot.
I bet he was stoked. It brings up a question. So you grew up Michigan, obviously whitetail hunting, tree stand hunting, now get to travel all over, a lot of spot and stalk stuff, especially out west. What are some of the things that you've learned just in your time. Like for me, I get the question all the time, like what do you learn? I'm like, I learn every time I go out in the field. I learn something that's going to make me better. But if somebody asks you like, hey, I'm going on my first spot and stalk archery hunt for mule deer out west, or even an elk hunt, right? Like what are 3 tidbits of advice that you can give them when they head out there?
Yeah, it's surprising how much, there's a lot of skill that I think you gain by repetition of doing it, just like anything. But it's very different than, like in a tree stand hunt, there are certain variables that in the moment can lead to success or not. And in a tree stand, it's more about the preparation side of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's like having the setup correct, making sure, even just little things like making sure your bow hanger is hanging in a way where your bow, you can grab it super easily and you don't have to like reach up and grab it somewhere, random and do a bunch of movement. So any sort of hunting situation involves some strategy beforehand. But when it comes to spot and stalk, I think, if I were to narrow it down to 3 things, I think one thing is making sure that your gear and your setup is in a way that allows you to kill efficiently. And I
Mm-hmm.
know that kind of sounds brutal, but I think that that has a lot of truth in it. Because even when we were on this aoudad hunt, we were just talking about, you start talking to the guides and everything and past experiences, and it's just amazing how many people show up and just are not ready.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be their equipment, that could be, all the way down to their bino harness system. It's like when you got your bino harness system, you want to have your release in an easy spot that you can get it. You want to have your rangefinder in an easy spot where you can get it. You want to make sure on a spot and stock that you have like low power binos, so that when, let's say you're glassing all day and you got like 15s or 16s, and
Mm-hmm.
then when you're in a spot and stock situation and you're just trying to find little tips of antlers at like 50, 60, 70, 80 yards, you don't want to have 15s or giant,
Yeah.
binos so close. So it's like making sure all your gear's correct so that when it does happen really fast, you're not fumbled around reaching in your pocket for your release or, anything like that. So, number one is like making sure that your gear is set up for a proper like spot and stock situation, so that when you're in the moment, it's just like in 2 seconds, you can get everything ready and shoot. Um, Next is, I think the strategy of how to approach an animal, how to get to an animal, and then be set up for a shot. I think there's a lot there that, quite frankly, you just cannot teach. You kind of have to just go through the motions enough where you're like, well, that didn't work, like skylining yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That was something I learned early on, out west, that you just don't think of as a whitetail hunter. It's like you never want to skyline yourself. You always want to be dropped down a little bit below on one side of the ridge or the other. Obviously making sure the wind, the thermals, for a lot of Midwest guys, they don't understand thermals.
Mm-hmm.
In Alberta, it really wasn't a huge deal because there wasn't super big mountains or anything, but thermals is a huge thing that you don't really think about. Constantly using your wind checker. The sun is such a big thing for spot and stock for concealment. You never want to be blasting out in the sun. If you want to, increase your odds, you always be in the shadows. There's all sorts of little things that you really got to think about in the approach, that you just don't get the exposure to in the Midwest,
Mm-hmm.
or things like that. That really just come with repetition. You can read on it. You can, kind of talk to people and everything, but until you really get into it, you just don't really know. And that's what was great about Alberta, because John, he actually was able to go on several stalks, failed
Mm-hmm.
attempts. And then he's like, kind of got the feel out of it, got the bugs out, all
Yeah.
that stuff. And that's why, mule deer in general, especially a place like that, you have a lot of quote unquote opportunities, or opportunities for a stalk. So you can just kind of go through the motions until finally everything just lines up and it works out. Maybe I'm just kind of vomiting on this, but like a third one is just making sure that your archery skills are up to bat,
Mm-hmm.
and that your sight and everything is really how you want it. For spot and stock stuff, I used to be a giant one pin, single pin guy. And now I'm using a 5 pin,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like in spot and stock situations, you need to disconnect that little bit of time. So, if it's at like 33 yards and it's close enough to where, if you had a single pin, you'd have to range it, dial, and shoot. But if you had even a 3-pin, a 4-pin, or
Mm-hmm.
a 5-pin, you could just range, draw back, and shoot. So it's like when I shot mine in Alberta, it was at 55, and I had just a couple seconds, when he was feeding, where I was like, I just popped up out of the grass, ranged him, just grabbed on my release, drew back, and shot. And I think that having a multiple pin sight that you're super confident in is huge for spot and stock, because the variable distance, it's just a lot greater than like in the whitetail
Yeah.
woods. Or in the whitetail woods, it's like you range that scrape and you range that trail, and typically you don't have super far shots. So it's like, okay, that's 24 and that's 37 right there, and you kind of have it all in your head, and can kind of, as a deer's coming, arrange, and get everything good. But out there, you just have no idea when you're
Yeah.
out there. You got to be able to move fast.
And distance looks different, right? You're like, that's only 40 yards, and you range it, and it's 90, and you're like, oh my gosh. I'm
Yeah.
a huge believer in, especially spot and stalk multiple pens. I had one in Newfoundland where I was caribou hunting. We spotted this bull off in the distance, and I had the guide right next to me. He had my rangefinder, and we tried the old just white bag. It was the middle of the rut, so we had this white burlap bag,
Sure.
and all of a sudden he just and comes in, right, and he comes down, he swings and comes downwind of us, and in my head I'm like, he's in a boogie, but he hit our wind and it was blowing so hard he was still confused, and he just worked in, and the guide was just, he kept ranging, and it was that I just, instead of having to do anything, right, I'm just locked in, and as soon as he hit 70, I was like, pull back, pin, let it go. And if I'd have had to do the one, you're sitting there now, you're adjusting, right? Because that caribou, he never stopped moving. It wasn't even if it was time to go down and try to adjust that one pin and go back up, it just wasn't going to work. Like that was a good one.
Yeah, like just last week on my Aoudad, when I shot mine, there was actually two, and we spotted the one, and it was at 50, and I drew back, and I had to take like 2 steps forward, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw the one that I ended up killing coming up the cut.
Uh-huh.
And instead of letting down or anything, I literally just swung on it. And me and my guide, we kind of, we were in sync at that point, and he's got the range. And I'm like, what's the range? He's like 30. And I didn't have to do anything. I just swung on it, got on him, and shot.
Uh-huh.
And it's like working with your, if you do have someone, a buddy or a guide or whoever with you, playing that game of having someone do the range and you just worry about the shot, that saves 3 to 5 seconds in the moment of having to let down or anything like that. And that's huge. A couple guys on that trip, we all got burned. I got burned on, we were trying to kill a mature ram, but it was a smaller ram earlier in the week. And it was same, just seconds. Like if we just had 2 more seconds, like the thing would have died. And everyone had a little bit of experience like that. So it's like in those key moments in a spot and stock, it's like 1 second, 2 seconds. Like that is so important every single time.
Yep.
So it's like, if you can work your process to where you can cut down on time, that's huge. It's like sometimes you only have 3 seconds to shoot, 4 seconds to shoot. Like I know, second time I've talked about my mountain goat hunt, but from the time I drew back to shot, I think it was 3 seconds. It's just like, you got to be just so fast sometimes, because that's all you have. It's like they see you or whatever. It's like you got to be able to eliminate all those variables down to just like the core shot and everything. So yeah, there's a lot to it, and I think the best thing for spot and stock is repetition. And going after things, in the summertime, if you can, go shoot pigs, go spot and stalk pigs, try to find something like that, try to spot and stalk some does in the Midwest, or, just doing something like that kind of just grinds the axe before, if you got a big trip coming up or something like that.
Speaking of deer, it looks like you had a pretty good whitetail season this year. Explain that, how from beginning to end.
Yeah, really good whitetail season. We're coming up on 5 years in Iowa, and we're kind of, acquiring properties and figuring out deer and history with farms. So I felt really good this year. Caitlin and I both shot, 2 apiece, really good deer, all mature deer. So we finally kind of got the program figured out. First deer this year was in October, as a deer we called Powerline, because he lived underneath these giant power lines, and that was the first time we saw him. But we have collectively as a group, because multiple people were hunting on this property, 4 years of history and 3 sets of sheds from the 3 previous years. So a lot of history of this deer. He ended up being 8.5 years old.
Oh, wow.
And last year we were trying to kill him and he just kept giving us the slip. It was just the weirdest thing. It's like we had so many photos of him, but we only had like 2 or 3 encounters with him. And it was driving everyone nuts. And it was just like, gosh, how can we kill this deer? It feels like he has our number every single time. So last summer, creatively, we were like, all right, let's make a couple spots. Let's manicure a couple spots where we know he's living in the fall, because actually he wouldn't summer on us. He'd show up in October every year and hang out all the way through the season. So we manicure these couple spots, and one of the spots, which I definitely will do this again if it works out, but there's a giant alfalfa field on this property, and every year they hay it and make it make hay bales. So we spent it was a team effort. We had multiple guys doing it because it was a pain and it took forever, but it probably took like 4 full days. We run around with the tractor, scooped up these hay bales, and we actually lined them up in about a 200-yard line. And it was a spot of the farm that it pinched them down, but not really. There was like 4 different trails that we knew, like we had photos and everything of this power line deer, but it was sporadic. And it was like, gosh, how do we solve this? So we lined up these hay bales and set it up perfectly in this ditch with a tree stand, busted out a tiny little food plot to steer the deer, literally to direct him to that. He only had, instead of 4 or 5 trails over the stretch of really, 500 yards, he now had 2 trails that he could go down to connect a big block of woods to basically the big ag, and a couple ditches, which he ended up living in the ditches, we're pretty sure. But sure enough, I ended up killing him right off the tee of those hay bales, just like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And, he just came down, pinched right down around them, shot him at like 28 yards or so. And yeah, that was first whitetail of the year. He was 166, 8.5 years old. So it was awesome. Like, it was unreal. It was awesome. That much history, that much story, and that's why I love whitetail hunting, is the repeated year over year over year, the strategy around it, the specific deer around it. Of course, you always get the random deer, but to be able to follow a deer like that for that long, and shoot him, like it was his biggest year, even at 8.5, it was the biggest he's ever been. And we had a super wet spring, so that probably was the reason why. But that was fantastic.
Think about how many hours you had into that deer. Like if you had to put you had to put a number into it, how many hours did you have into that deer of sitting, of then all the prep work for food plot, getting the hay bales out there, of over the last years, like how many hours into that deer?
I mean, just over the summer, we spent probably 10 full days, 12 days, just getting these 2 spots. I had 2 spots kind of manicured for him. But yeah, and then the year prior, hunting him so much. But what's funny is it only took me 3 days to kill him. So once we had the program in place and he started showing back up on cameras, it was very like surgical. It's like, okay, it's like he's here, he's there. It's like I sat once, didn't see him, and then I took some days off because it just wasn't right. And then went back in, and sure enough, it was the only deer I saw. It was the only deer I saw all afternoon. So I think that's when these deer get big and old like that, it's sometimes you have to be super creative, and figure out how to kill them. So that was cool. I don't know if that'll ever will happen again quite like that, to literally the game plan could have been written down on a sheet of paper, and it was option A, I was going to kill him here, or option B, I was going to kill him here, and it happened. I remember even the year before, it's like, this deer can get killed in the end of October because he's hammering this big alfalfa field for the last 2 years. We'd made the game plan with those sets, kind of pinched them just perfectly, and it just worked.
That's awesome.
It's so rare for it all to happen like that, but it was pretty awesome.
So what was your next deer after that?
So after that, while all that was going on, just before I killed that power line deer, I closed on my first farm ever. So I bought my first piece of property, which was kind of a lifelong goal of mine. I think any whitetail hunter's goal is to own a piece of ground that they can call their own and, be able to start that story of their
Mm-hmm.
own. So I was able to put that together, closed on it, I think October 14th or 15th. And then in Iowa, if you own land, you get an extra buck tag as a landowner tag.
Mm-hmm.
So once all that cleared and got processed, we started hunting. I think Halloween was our first day we started hunting my farm. And this piece of property, I actually got permission from the previous landowner the year prior to hunt it. So I had a little bit of history already. I only hunted it a few times, ran a few cameras, but there was one deer last year in 2023 that I got photos of. Super old deer. We called it the 6x4 because in 2023 he was just like a typical but a clean 6, and then just like it was just like an 8-point side, really big 8-point side. So kind of uniquely just called him the 6x4 because it, the big 8 and the tall 2s. We just call him the 6x4. So this year, right when I closed on my farm, I ran out and put a bunch of trail cameras out, and it was one of the first deer I got on camera. It was the 6x4 this year. So I was like, that's awesome. And he was a little bit different. He got really big brow tines. Like in 2023, he had pretty good brow tines, maybe like 4 or 5 inches. But this year they were like 9-inch brow tines. He was actually a 6x5 this year. He grew a little fourth. And it was like game on. So we started hunting him. Ended up on November 7th. We kind of figured out his program. I kind of knew his program from the year prior a little bit. Just textbook morning. I mean, it was like super cold, November 7th. I think it was November 7th. Like 8:30 in the morning, we saw him go up the ridge behind us. What he was doing, he was just doing his loop. He would do this loop every now and again. Right when he got off a hot doe, he would start going again. And there was this big creek crossing that he would cross every like 2 or 3 days that we were set up on. And sure enough, I saw him like heading off like 60, 70 yards. I gave him a little grunt, heard it, spun around, came right through the creek crossing, came right up at like the CRP field right on the edge. And I shot him at 15 yards. Perfect. And he ran 80 yards and tipped over. So that was incredible to shoot 2 deer like that, literally 2 weeks apart, 3 weeks apart, was absolutely unreal. I mean, it was like script up a dream season for me, like shooting 260 plus inch, super mature deer. I mean, power line is 8. I haven't got the test results back from the 6x4, but I would not be surprised if he's 8, 9, or 10. I mean, he was so old. His hide was all messed up. He had tine punctures all in his neck. He was a warrior. So that one went 163. So yeah, two great bucks in Iowa with so much story behind both of them. It was pretty incredible. It was gonna be really tough to repeat that just like that ever again.
Absolutely. So bought your own farm. When you were looking for property to buy as your own, what were the keys of the property that you really wanted to see, and then what made you say, "This is it. This is the one I'm gonna do"?
Yeah, I memean, it's really tough in southern Iowa where we're at. It's just competitive. It's like farms come up and they go, and a lot of them get sold just by handshake deals. They never make it to market. So that's kind of what this one was. It never made it to market. And I knew it was a great farm because of, I hunted it the year before. It's like the neighborhood. I think the neighborhood of the farm that you purchase is almost more important than the farm itself. I think that if you can, either by talking to people or history or just driving around, it's like, man, this 10-mile radius right here is the ticket, because it's like you have the deer herd on your property, but it's like, what's all around it? What are your neighbors like? So there's a couple big landowners around, and the deer quality is really, really good. We got a lot of good young deer. So I think, there was a couple things. Access on the property was really good, like the roads and stuff.
Mhm.
It's not like a easement, and then you got one entry, and you got to go through the main timber to get to the whole property. Um, it's a pretty rough property, actually. I have this giant list of things of projects we're going to kick off here. We're going to NWTF this weekend, but right when we get back from that, it's like game on to do a couple projects and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. It's always tough. Like this is just my first one, so I
Mhm.
can't say too much about it. But it's like key things that I look at is a good neighborhood. How is the property laid out as far as access? Is it set up? Are the bones good
Mhm.
to where you're not going to be blowing deer out all the time? So the bones are good. The timber's good. There's a big creek running through it. It has everything that you would want in a whitetail property. So, now it's pretty raw. It doesn't have a whole lot done to it right now. So, busting out some food plots, doing some TSI improvements, put in food. There's like no food on this property right
Mhm.
now. So, putting in food is going to be a big key factor going into this year. Um, but yeah, I mean, the end of the day, there's so many guys kill big deer on like 10-acre lots,
Mhm.
5-acre lots. And that's because it's just in the right spot. It's
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
right neighborhood. So it's like getting that property in the right spot in the right neighborhood is number one. I mean, I've been a part of properties where it's an awesome property. On paper it should be phenomenal, and then you get there and it's just like it's not that good,
Yeah.
and it's because of just the neighborhood that it's in is just not great. It's like, I think it's so important that that neighborhood aspect, to know that you got good neighbors, not even just good neighbors, but just good property around. You
Mhm.
got that constant filter because bucks move so much. I mean, miles in the rut, and you can pull deer with food and,
Mhm.
planting food, and yeah, I think that's so important.
That's how long had you been looking to buy a piece of property?
Not very long. I mean, I'm still super young, so it's been a goal of mine. I set a goal by the end of 2024 to buy something
Mhm.
because, my personal career, obviously, we're growing the business and growing all aspects, and kind of the next aspect of my business is real estate.
Mhm.
Buying farms and diversifying, my own portfolio to almost like not as a defense, as an offense
Yeah,
move, but
yeah.
like defense of, diversify what you have going on. So that's really what I wanted to do. So figuring that whole process out was, a huge
Yeah,
learning
yeah.
curve for me. How do you even do that?
Mhm.
Like how do you buy a farm? So big learning curve for me, figuring all that out, the ins and outs of doing that. So no, not very long. I haven't been thinking about it, but I did set a goal in 24, and then I just kind of fell into, this property and was able to do it. But now it's just got my wheels turning. It's like, what
Uh,
else can I do this? Can I do that? Let's look for something else maybe. Because I just love it. I mean, I love the strategy, the land management, all that stuff. I absolutely love.
so question, have you named it yet?
Have I named it? No,
Yeah.
I haven't really named it. Um, Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I really haven't named it yet. I also don't want to get too connected to it because I know properties come and go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
That's the number one thing is like, gosh, are we going to keep this forever? Right now it's like I'd love to keep it forever, but in reality, it's like, I have some pretty big goals to own a lot of land. So I know in order to get that, there's always stepping stones and everything like that. But no, I don't have a name on it. Well, obviously, an LLC or
yeah, yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
but no, I haven't named it like the Bee Ranch or anything like that. I just kind of
It's funny you mentioned that getting attached to it. So I bought my first farm in the middle of COVID down in Kentucky, and I named it Bootleggers
yeah.
Ridge. We've had a couple offers on it since, and I'm just like when I see an offer and come through and thinking about it, and I'm just sitting there and I'm like, man, I remember my daughter shooting a deer there. I remember my first deer up in the front, Dad's first deer there, and
Yeah,
I'm just like, man, you're right. You get attached to it, right? Like that's
you
the
get
thing. I
attached.
named it,
Yeah.
and that was a complete wrong thing. Are you gonna film all the work you're doing on the farm and kind of let everybody know, like, hey, this is what you're doing as part of it? Like that's I think that's cool.
Yes. Yes, that's definitely the plan. We want to tell the story on it, and since it is a pretty raw farm, I mean, step one is literally just access. Like
Mm-hmm.
we right now, I mean, getting a side by side around the place is like almost impossible. So it's like busting out creek crossings and just getting access to the farm. Like that's step one. It's the most basic thing, but
Yeah.
that's step one. Yeah, we're gonna document the whole thing throughout this spring and summer, starting like literally next week. And I just love that part so much. You know, I went down there yesterday. I found first 3 sheds off of it. Just driving around, not even really shed hunting because so many bucks are still holding. But yeah, just the whole the whole ecosystem of a farm and the whitetail hunting. Yeah, we're gonna document it all. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
100%.
That's awesome. All right, so I know 2025. Besides Alberta mule deer, you're actually heading to British Columbia after a moose too, right?
Yeah, I'm super excited about that. I did the moose hunt like 3 or 4 years ago now with you guys up in Alaska,
Mm-hmm.
which that's like a staple hunt on my channel and in my memories. I mean, that was the big moose hunt. But a dream animal of mine was always an Alaskan moose. I mean, there's something about, and then it confirmed it when I went up there. It's
Yeah.
just something about moose hunting, just all the way down to, you know, the camp and the country you're in, and then the animals. I mean, a moose is just like, rah, you know,
Yeah.
it's just like this giant thing that almost seems when you shoot one and you walk up to it, it's just like this thing's giant.
Yeah.
Like it's an out of body experience
Yeah.
almost. It just seems so foreign. So yeah, I'm so excited. And yeah, a little familiar, same place or roughly the same place I shot my mountain goat. So it's beautiful up there. Very excited to go back.
When are you going up there? Because ironically, I am going to be there with my muzzleloader going after a moose and a mountain goat.
I think we're going to be there the same time.
Are we?
September, end of September through October 2nd.
Yeah, that's
something.
got to be darn close to when I'm going to be there too. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that'll be good. They're going to be rutting.
Yeah.
Then, right?
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah, they should be depending on weather. That's like right in that sweet spot. There's like a 7-day window. They'll start in there depending on basically once it gets cold, they'll start going all over the place.
Yeah, and that's my dream is to get a moose coming into a call,
That's
just
the-
all bowed up and shoot one at
Yeah.
like 8 yards. That's my oh man, if that happens, I might just die and call it quits there because that is absolute. Because when I went a couple of years ago, we went early. We went early in September. I think it was like, you know, like 10 through 18 or something like that, I
Mhm.
think. So there were still some moose in velvet.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
we caught the total other side of it. So we really didn't experience any of that. It was more just glass and spot and stalk, stuff like that. But I'm really excited if the rut's going and we can start calling them and reacting with them and
Yeah.
stuff like that. I'm going to be so excited about that.
No, that's awesome. So as you've traveled more, like I'd look at, you got a lot of experience, right? You've traveled international. You've done a lot of these different types of hunts. Like what have you learned from starting to travel? Like people that want to go on a hunt somewhere else. Like think of people here in Michigan that have whitetail hunted, saved up, and they have that chance, right? Because what do you need to be able to travel and hunt? Well, one, you need time and you need to be financially able to. Time usually is the tricky one for guys in their 30s and 40s. How do I take off 10 days from work, right? And then financially, do I have it to be able to go? Like what are your words of advice having traveled and done trips like this for people that are thinking of going out west or somewhere else for the first time?
I think it's just so eye-opening. When you push yourself outside of that bubble, in life in general, like when you push yourselves out to these incredible places, it just is so eye-opening. Like it really does every single time, puts your mind in a different perspective of even just the world. And then on a hunting level, I think it really makes you a better hunter every single time that you go somewhere new, you experience new things, you hunt with new people. I think it's incredibly eye-opening. It makes you more well-rounded. I mean, my most favorite thing in the entire world is going to Alaska or BC or anywhere incredibly remote where you just like sit still at night and you just don't hear anything. You hear nothing. You might hear a little bird in the I mean, it's like even if you're in remote, whitetail country, you hear like a distant highway, you hear an airplane going over. But when you're out there, it's just like it's almost a big reset. It's a big reset. It's an eye opener. And then hunting all these different creatures, it's like you're hunting things different ways every single time,
Uh,
but you kind of learn and diversify yourself, and you really broaden your skills every single time you go and do one of these hunts.
I would say from COVID, the mindset of at WTA of new hunters, new traveling hunters, people that have hunted their whole life but finally get into traveling, of the mindset of, hey, you know what, I realized, like, I was going along in my life and thought nothing was going to change, and then all of a sudden I had to stay in my house for 6 months, right? Like, nobody ever thought that was a thing. And they're like, I'm going to do it now while I'm healthy, while I'm physically able. I'm not going to wait till I retire. I'm going to go do it. And the amount of people that go on their first hunt and say, I don't know what I've been holding back for so long. Like, I can make the time. I can save and do this and experience this different type of hunting, different type of experience. Like, I'm one right there with you, right? If you get on a northern hunt and you sit there by a fire at night, you don't hear airplanes. You don't hear buzzing of a power line. You don't hear cars honking, kids playing, like all that stuff. And you just sit there. And for me, it usually takes a day or two, but then all of a sudden, like, this total sense of relaxation comes over you. No trouble sleeping, no trouble sleeping all the way through the night. Like what I have, like a normal life here, right? Like when you go to sleep, I'm thinking about what I got to do the next morning. I'm thinking about all this stuff, and you get up there and it's gone. Like, it puts life in perspective.
Yeah, it's an incredible deal, and it's tough. I think, you could do that other ways. You could go on a hiking trip or on a remote, whatever sort of trip, but hunting really does force you to, or it creates an opportunity to go do things that you normally wouldn't do, and I think that's a Donnie Vincent quote from a long time ago. It's like hunting takes you to extraordinary places. And it really does.
Yeah, it
It's
does.
like you normally you wouldn't just go take a trip in northern BC or Alaska or wherever and just go sit on the side of a mountain, hike 8 miles up a mountain and just go sit, you know?
Yeah.
It's like you wouldn't normally do that. You wouldn't go do that. But hunting brings you to all of these crazy places, which is incredible. I mean, we're very fortunate that you and I have both done that, and I wish everyone has an opportunity to do that.
So it was funny. My dad mentioned when I was just starting to get in the industry, and I like a lot of goals, right? Like I like to set lofty goals for myself and what I want to do. And he mentioned, he's like, well, you want to climb the seven peaks of the world, right? Tallest one in every continent. And I sat there and I thought about it, and I'm like, it would be kind of cool. Man, I just don't know if I can hike without the purpose of what's at the top, right? Like when you're like, for me, when I'm hunting and climbing a mountain, I'm going for a purpose, right? Like there's a sheep up there, or a mountain goat up there. If I'm like, if you're in West Texas, like there's an aoudad or something up there. And for me, like that's the motivation to get to the top. If I sat there and said, man, I just want to go up there and take a picture, I'd be like, it's a hard sell. That's a hard sell for me. Now there are thousands of people that want to go and do that, right? But that's just not me.
Yeah. 100%.
So the big question you probably get all the time, like when you started this and got into the industry, you probably had no idea you'd grow to be as big as you've gotten in such a short time.
Sure.
What are some of the things you've learned about the industry, good and bad, right? Like you get the question from a lot of young kids, hey, and I love your channel. What are some suggestions for me to try to do the same thing, right? Like not everything about the hunting industry is glamour, right? You got to learn a lot of the hard lessons along the way. Like what are your tidbits of what you've learned in the industry that you could give to somebody that's young that wants to try to copy your model of how you got there?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I do get this question a lot, because I think that it seems very fancy, and you get to go hunting for a living, and you get to do all these things.
Inspirational, right? Like you get to live the inspirational part of what a lot of people dream about and work all day, and then get to go and hunt for a couple hours at night. It's inspirational.
For sure. I think for someone that really wants to get into it, I think that's their first fault, is that they want to get into it. I think that if you, especially for all these young guys, high school, college, like what do you want to do with your life? I think you need to really find, and this is separated from hunting in this space, because I think you need to be super real with yourself on what you actually want to do, what you're good at, and you have to really love what you got going on. When I started, I loved hunting, I loved archery. I was already doing all the things.
Mm-hmm.
And then I really enjoyed filming. And I really got involved in editing. I really loved filming something, editing, putting it together. And I would do things that I wouldn't even post. I just enjoyed doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously I started posting and just having fun with friends. Um, and it just happened super organically. It was something that I was already doing. I enjoyed doing it. And then it also just created a career. I think the number one fault for guys that are wanting to get into it is they want the end result. They want the end result of hunting all the time and doing all these things right now,
Mm-hmm.
and they want people to sponsor them, and they want it now.
Yep.
And I think that's their number one mistake is like, one, it's statistically incredibly hard to do this, as a job, as full time, as whatever. Even work in the industry, statistically, that's very hard. It's like all like just to get a job at Mathews or even WTA
Mm-hmm.
or anything like that. It's very hard because it's just it's a small space. So I think it's like you really got to find what you like to do and do it regardless if you were, to get paid from it or whatever. And it's like, distilling down to what I do, it's like YouTube channel. It's like all these guys creating a YouTube channel right out the gate. It's like just start posting videos because you enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Do
Mm-hmm.
things because you enjoy it. And then if you do want to see if maybe some things will stick, just dedicate time. Like dedicate time to try it for a year with I don't want to say no goals, but maybe no expectations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Set yourself goals, make videos, have fun with it. But don't go at the quickest way to fail is to be like, I'm going to go at this super hard and I'm going to create something. And I'm going to make it work, because it just comes across that's what you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like people can see through that.
Yeah.
And the consumers, the viewers, they are way smart. They're so smart now. I mean, they have everything at their fingertips, and they can see right through
Mm-hmm.
disingenuine content, marketing, products, all this stuff. So it's like starting out a YouTube channel, you have to do it for the right reasons. You have to do it for fun. And a lot of times, a YouTube channel, the founders or the creators of those really enjoy the video and editing aspect,
Mm-hmm.
because at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's content and it's media. So you really have to learn to enjoy that aspect, telling a story, all the things, running a camera, editing, the whole deal. You really have to enjoy that. And that is always the tip of the spear. I constantly am reminding myself that everything we have going on as a company is because of the YouTube channel, because we're making videos, because we're a media machine and we enjoy telling stories.
Mm-hmm.
That is the number one thing. And that is what everyone should be on fire about, is telling those stories. So people going into it would be like, I don't like to video. I really don't like editing, but I want a YouTube channel and I want to try to make it work.
Yeah.
It's like, if you don't really like telling stories and you just want to hire someone to follow you around and do whatever, it's like from the get-go, from zero, it's like, probably not going to work for you, man.
Yeah.
Like you're going about it in the wrong way. So it's like starting out as a young kid, starting from nothing. You really got to find how, find your love in something.
Yeah.
And if it is editing and video and telling stories, you can have a successful channel. And then it also takes 10 years to be established.
Yeah.
I was going at it since 2014, probably. And I felt like it took nearly 10 years until I really was able to have an established portfolio, an established workflow, an established crew.
Mm-hmm.
That it's like, okay, now this is a business. Now, we got established sponsors, we're selling on the .com,
Yep.
all the things we have going on now. but I mean, you know this, but it's like at the core, you got to really love what you're doing. If it's business, if it's media, whatever it is, you really got to love to do it. And I think some people like the fantasy of hunting every day, doing all these things, but it's like, that's just what you see. That's not really what goes on. I mean, there's so much in the back end, and on the YouTube side of things, telling a story, documenting what's going on is the most important thing, and enjoying it is so important.
Well, I think you hit it right. Like everybody sees you on YouTube or on video and like, man, this guy just living the dream, right? He's hunting all the time, traveling to all these crazy places. For me, it gets 10 times tougher when I'm in the field traveling because still running multiple businesses, same thing as you on the backside, except now my window to answer questions, I'm not sitting in an office or on my phone all day. I'm literally filming for 6 to 8 hours a day. Now I still got to go back and do all that stuff, right? So you hit a great one. The question you need to ask yourself when you look at going into the hunting industry is why? Why do you want to go into the hunting industry? What's your reason why? First off, if your reason why is to make money or become famous, I would just scratch that right off the bat, right? Like that can't be your why of why you want to get into the hunting industry. It's got to be because you love it. Like that's got to be it.
100%. Love it, and love the different aspects of it, not just love hunting. Because if you just love hunting, go make a bunch of money elsewhere and then just go pay for your hunts if you just love hunting. It's like, because, a big struggle of mine is sometimes it takes the romance out of hunting because you got this pressure to perform. You got to make a video. You got all these expectations. After you get done with the hunt, it's a whole editing process, delivering process. You got all these sponsors involved. Like it doesn't take the romance out of it because at the end of the day, I still love it. But at times I have to reset myself, and it's not as fancy and glamorous. I talk to other guys, in similar positions as me, where it's like they almost want to quit sometimes because they're like, man, this pressure is incredible, to perform and to do all this stuff. It's just like, gosh, it's like almost not fun anymore. So it's like, if your reason to get into it is just because you love hunting, that's not good enough.
Yeah.
So many people love hunting. Go make money elsewhere of something that you actually love as a career passionately, and just go hunting.
Yep.
But if you love all these other things that also involve, like if it's video or if it's business or if it's marketing, or if you find your niche in that way to where, now we're involved in the hunting world to some extent, that you're very self-realizing that, I'm a finance guy. Let me get really good at finance, and let me try to work with a company where I can crush it at finance, but I'm involved at some level. And I think there's levels to it all. And, I think there's a lot of self-realization. And I think people just get so hung up on, I just want to go hunting all the time. And the best way to do that is to try to film and to do all that, and it's just like, yes, but no, there's always an exception.
And you mentioned pressure, right? You're a media company. Well, media companies got to turn out films, right? Like videos.
Yeah.
So if you get on a bad run, which happens to every hunter, and you go 2 trips, 3 trips in a row now without letting an arrow go or squeezing the trigger or anything, you got to keep producing, right? Like if you look at everybody's big channel, it's because they produce. And producing adds a lot of stress, right? Like you get there and all of a sudden you got a bad weather pattern. You can't do anything for that. Now you're in the grind. So people always say, well, you can't have that much pressure because you're hunting every day. Listen, the pressure, it doesn't matter what you do, what industry you work in, like pressure's there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and it's a weird thing, like this is like, hunting and killing animals for content is also like a weird thing. It's like you want to cast the net wide, but you don't want to cast it too wide.
Yep.
It's like you always want to set realistic expectations. And, I know earlier on I was like, I'm going to get 12 tags and I'm going to go September through January. I'm going to just go, fast and hard. And it's like a lot of times that you spread the net so wide that you end up catching nothing.
Yep.
And it's like sometimes when you are very meticulous and dedicate and are genuine about these hunts and really give them your fullest, sometimes a little bit of that pressure decreases, and you perform a lot better. To
Mm-hmm.
whereas, it's like week after week after week after week, you're going on different trips and you're blasting, you're spraying and praying. And, a lot of times that doesn't work as good as, all right, let's dedicate September to an elk hunt.
Yep.
Let's dedicate October to a deer hunt. I think that on a pressure level definitely decreases, and then you perform a lot better. The video is a lot better, stuff like that. So it's ebbs and flows. And we kind of diversified to where a lot of my whitetail stuff is longer. It maybe is a whole month where we create one video. But it's tough because there's only so much time every fall, and it's a constant battle. It's a constant battle where you're learning and you're figuring things out. And, the consumers and the viewers want everything right now. They want it yesterday.
Yep.
So it's just a constant battle.
Well, that's one of the ones that I get a lot is if you post something on Instagram or whatever, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Where's the film?" Well, listen, I mean, this just happened. Like this can't get any more. Just happened, and the film's gonna take. It's gonna take a little bit, right? You got to edit. You want to make it good, and like it's part that just does it. What's something that you've been in the industry now 10 years? What's something that you wish you wouldn't have done that you did? Like learning. I'm gonna go and do this part. I'm gonna try to make my business this, and then all of a sudden, 6 months later, you're like, man, that was a terrible idea. I got backtracked.
Luckily, I'm a pretty patient guy. I'm a pretty organic guy. Everything's been a slow churn, thankfully, in the upward direction. I really haven't had any crazy, like business-wise, that did not work out. I think as far as building my business as a business owner, as like a CEO, putting my boss cap on, it's been very fun for me and also very challenging to figure out how do you actually build a business?
Yeah.
What are these steps, like getting a CFO, like getting employees, doing benefits, all that aspect. I would say that I now have everything in place. But I feel like I maybe could have done that a little sooner, as far as like, I like to call it adult supervision, as we are a bunch of 20-year-olds running around with a business. And I didn't get to it too late for any means, but for our next big growth projection, I'm very thankful that I got adult supervision in early as we grow. I mean, we've been growing, at 100% business growth rate for the last 4 years. So it's like, when do you insert, X employee, or when do you insert, adult supervision is what I call it, at the right times. That's always a balance game. Obviously cash flow and all that jazz. And I think this is the side of things that the public doesn't see, obviously, but I mean, there's a lot of things that you got to do really smart on a business side that sets you up for success in the long run. Because I think YouTube channels, they don't boom and bust, but I think that we saw it in the TV world. Perfect example. People get on TV, they grow really big, and then like TV's dead.
Yep.
What do you do now? So I'm really trying to set precautions for my business to be able to play the long game. And again, this really isn't something that we've failed at or have done bad at, but I see it as it could have been or could be a potential threat. It's just like where just making sure that we're set up for the long-term success. So right now what we're doing is we're really hammering down on our .com, berealcustom.com. We're growing that at a very fast rate. But that's kind of to diversify the business, to help really bring on more guys to make the media machine better. Because at the end of the day, the YouTube and the media machine is the number one thing. It's our business.
Yep.
And we're starting to, go off, buy a farm, grow the .com, all these things, and you got to grow them in tandem. But yeah, it's just like, it's growing the business, and this, but it's growing the business in a smart way. Don't make your eyeballs too big. Don't bite off more than you can chew. but also don't hinder yourself by waiting too long
Mm-hmm.
to set the right procedures in place to help grow the business. So yeah, kind of the last 2 years, we've had pretty good growth. So just trying to figure out, okay, what's the correct amount of personnel in our business to set that up for success? Because
Mm-hmm.
really the last year I've been pulled in so many different directions, that really the YouTube side of things kind of gets on back burner sometimes, because
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I got to pay attention to this. I got to pay attention to that. So, I have been and continuing to put the people in the right places where I can focus more of my attention back on the media side of things,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what's fueling the engine. And unfortunately, being the guy, it's like you're just pulling so many different directions. So
Yeah.
putting the right people in the right seats to help fuel all of the machines on all levels, is kind of where I'm at right now, and some challenges that I'm currently facing of just like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
It's like, we got to make sure to set ourselves up for success. And I think, to go back to your question of something that I wish I went back on, it's just like, I probably could have had more patience in some aspects. And I'm very thankful that I did have a lot of patience, because all this stuff takes a lot of time. And you can't rush anything. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think it's just organic growth, doing it for the right reasons. It's like written on my whiteboard is inspire and educate.
Uh-huh.
Those are two core pillars of everything we have going on. We want to inspire our viewers through
Uh-huh.
everything that we do. It's like, oh, I could go do this, hun. I could build my own bow. I could fletch my own arrows. It's
Yep.
like we want to inspire people to do things that maybe they wouldn't normally do if they didn't watch our stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
then educate. We have a whole pillar of educational stuff that we really want to do a better job at and really hammer down at. Yeah, man. You have so many irons in the
Uh,
fire. I have a bunch of irons in the fire. It's just like, how do you keep a pulse on everything, keep everything growing and stable, and set up for the long run, because that's what I love this game. I love archery. I love bow hunting. And it's just like, how can I set up my guys to be the most successful they can be?
yep.
How can I set myself up? How can we create a culture under Be Real, to help promote and grow the sport of bow hunting and the sport of archery and all the above?
Yeah. I think you're doing it correct. Like I see a lot of people that come and grow big channels or get a face. And I always ask these, because I learned this early on, what are you really selling with the channel? What are you selling? You can have partners and sponsors, and those are all great, right? Those can come and go in a blink of an eye. Like I'm fortunate, like you got long-term partners, right? Like Mathews with you is a long-term partner. Like you got all these long-term partners, which are awesome. I'm a believer that to do it successfully, you need to have some skin in the game and something that you're trying to sell or you're trying to push behind. That's kind of like the core while you're there. Every video you intertwine something that's yours, that you've got 100% stake in behind it. Yes, you're going to tie in a great rifle partner or scope partner and stuff like those are the ones you would use in the field anyway. But the people that really have something that they're invested in behind, those are the ones I've seen longevity out of, right? Not a 5 or 6 year run, a 25-year run. Like that's like for me with WTA and all that stuff, like we intertwine all that in there and it works because that's what I push. That's what I believe in. That's why I think I can have longevity in this. It's not just short and sweet and kind of like you, like push your brand, your website. You've got stuff that you're building now that makes 100% sense, and you've got longevity behind it, right?
100%. Yeah. And that's kind of where my mindset is diversifying and growing and being in control of things that we're in control of. It's like Ultra Views one, like I've been very tight knit with them since the very beginning. I'm very involved with them, very involved with my own stuff, behind the scenes and the .com and everything. So yeah, I totally agree. I think the TV era, really, some people were able to transition very fast into the digital and the media if they are like, a lot of those guys are smart, but a lot of them just died on the vine.
Yeah.
They didn't have anything else going on. One of my archery mentors, because I shot professional archery for a while, I think professionals in any sort of sport, if it's NFL, basketball, archery, whatever, if that's all you have going on, the second you break a finger, break a leg, or anything else, you're done.
Yeah, it's over.
You need to be diversified, and I think that goes to everyone. You need to be diversified to some level of financially, skills, all the above. You can't only have one thing going on. So that's really what we're, this next chapter of business growth and everything is diversifying that. God forbid if YouTube shuts down or something, it's like there's still more things going on that we can, as a business still operate.
Yeah, you mentioned that the TV. It was interesting to see some of them that had been long faces on traditional TV form, as you said, die at the vine. And then it comes back to where they were probably better actors than they were real life personality
100%.
of being on social media or something like that and just being yourself, to where they, not interesting, but they just couldn't be themselves, right? They were used to producing everything, to where the only thing that really wasn't produced in the field was the actual shot. Everything that led up to that was a production. Everything after that was a production. And then you go see, well, just be yourself. And a lot of them just froze, right? They didn't have the personality for it.
Yeah. And the world keeps changing, man. I mean, it's like in 10 years, it's going to be something else. And it's just like being nimble and on your feet is all part of the game.
So another question. So with you and Caitlin both in the industry, right? How does that relationship work? Because you guys in the fall are like, where she's over here, you're over there, like hitting with the text. Like, how does that whole part work? Does it, like, it seems like you guys are great together.
Yeah. So this was a very challenging thing starting out when we were together, is how do we manage that and all that jazz. And Caitlin is incredibly independent.
Mm-hmm.
She loves doing her own thing. She, her own business and content is 100% hers. She does what she wants, her whole deal, which I look up to her for that aspect, for being independent and all that jazz. She won't even let me like hang a tree stand for her. Like, she's incredibly independent. But yeah, she blasts all around. She's big turkey girl, so turkey season comes, she's running all around. But yeah, I think both of us, to some aspect, are like honing in a little bit more. We both spent a lot of time in Iowa in the fall. She shot 2 great bucks. She shot one deer we had 4 years of history with, like 150 something inch deer in Iowa with the bow. And then she shot 172 inch deer with the gun in Iowa. So she spent a lot of time in Iowa. But yeah, it's very unique being, there's always pros and cons in anything. It's like you're in a relationship with someone who doesn't know hunting, doesn't care, go do your thing, whatever. Yeah. And then there's some that, want to go hunting with you. And then in my case, it's like Caitlin's off doing her own thing, hunting all the time. So it's great. It's always pros and cons. It's like we do some hunts together and we do a lot separately. But we all have our own thing going on, and we both understand that, which is, I think, a great thing about our relationship, is like, we both understand everything that we both have going on. So there's no friction there. Be like, okay, we got to do this trip. We got to go do here, have to film this, have to do that. And we help each other out, of course, whenever. But yeah, she's incredibly independent on everything she's got going on.
That's awesome. It always looks like we've been married now for almost 16 years, and it's one of those like different stressors in a relationship, right? And then you look at your guys' schedule in the fall of literally like crisscrossing here and there, and I just sit there, I'm like, oh man, I wonder what like Tuesday looks like over there.
Yeah. We try to travel as much as we can together, but ultimately in the fall it is tough. I think we were apart for like a month, which we haven't been that long apart, I think, ever. And it was like, gosh, that sucked. Let's try not to do that again next year. At least let's go on the hunt together, or something like that. So yeah, no, it's challenging and tough, but ultimately it's great for both of us that we both are in it. We both understand it. We both support each other. And we both, when it comes to whitetails and everything, we are helping each other a lot. It's so funny because she shot a bigger deer than me this year in Iowa, and she loves to rub.
It takes a man to admit that. It takes a man to admit.
It's totally fine. I love that she loves it, and I'm super happy for her for shooting that deer. But yeah, we share a lot of properties, and she's always chasing after. One thing about Caitlin, and me too, but she loves to chase after one deer, even if it takes all season long. She'll burn a whole season just trying to kill one deer. She's hard headed like that. She's just like, okay, girls in general. She's like,
Yeah.
she ends up liking that deer a bunch, or whatever. But it's great. Yeah, it's been fun. Definitely challenging at the beginning of just like, okay, what do we got going on? And me being a guy and mansplaining and everything, it's like I always wanted to do stuff for her and all that jazz.
Yeah.
She's like, no. She's like, I got it. It's like, help me when I need it, but it's like, you're not doing stuff for me. You're not doing whatever. So I really respect that. And yeah, she's awesome.
That's awesome. So where do you see your business in 5 and 10 years? Like what's the goal for you? Like a lot of times when you're growing, you're just trying to get to tomorrow, right? And then 2 months, 4 months down the road. But I think you've been around long enough. Like you probably got something set for 5 or 10 years down the road, or where you see it.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have, our big term goals and stuff. I think right now our largest opportunity is our .com, is our website. We just are fleshing out right now custom arrows.
Mm-hmm.
So we're offering the UV1Ks, but also a whole line of Victory arrows. The UV1K is Victory made arrow. So we're fleshing everything out, and we're really standing up a full custom arrow builder. So in the next coming months, it's like, if you want a Victory Rip TKO with a red, white, and blue fletching with this wrap, we're building right now the capacity to be like, okay, in a week, we'll ship that out right to you, cut to length, everything like that. So we're building tiers in the .com to grow that, working with new partners, offering more things, really fleshing that out. So we are, like, in April, we're moving into like triple the size of a warehouse. We're packed out of this one that we're currently in. So it's really growing that is like a big lofty goal. And I don't really know where it's going to be in 5 years. I just know that we can grow that for sure to become a leader in like really just archery supplies in general. If you want to do custom arrow building, if you want Ultra stuff, if you want, we're selling a lot of stuff. If be a good supplier for high-end hunting and archery stuff. So that's a big goal. Obviously YouTube, like, make that media machine as well oiled as possible, getting more guys on. And then short-term goal is to get a podcast going again. That's why I'm like looking at your set and everything. I'm like, gosh, this is awesome. But I used to do it like 3-4 years ago. We have like 50 episodes. And then we just got so busy doing everything else. But I really want to bring that back as another media channel to really get that ripping. And then, I really want to, buy more land. I think that's a personal goal of mine. I love just that whole aspect of life in general, owning land. That whole, the whitetail ecosystem as a whole, like that's a big personal goal of mine. But yeah, we got collaborations with other companies that, we kind of 2 year down the line that are kind of big. So yeah, just keep the gas down, man. How it is.
Well, I was on the podcast one. They'd done it for just short of 2 years, just on the recording, right? No video part. And it got to the point with podcasts that you had to have video. And it was just finding a unique way to be able to do it and make it work, because I didn't like the just computer to computer stuff, because I'm like, nobody's going to watch that, right? And then all of a sudden, after I shot Freak Show, Jackie Bushman had me on the Buckmasters one, which, side note, like, grow up, watch Jackie Bushman hunt whitetail, right? And then all of a sudden Jackie shoots you a message like, hey, can you come on? I'm like, absolutely. And then you got to hit him with, I like try not to say it, right? And then at the end, I'm like, Jackie, I have to admit, I've grown up watching you on TV. And he's like, yeah, I get that all the time. I'm old. And I'm like, no, this is like, this is awesome. But so Jackie's setup was very similar to what I had. And I love the cut angles. I love the whole thing, because we'll be able to tie in like your mule deer hunt pictures and your mountain goat hunt and all this other stuff to make it an edit to where people are going to actually want to watch it, right? Like, If you just want to listen to it in a car, you can listen to it in a car, but now you've got something that you can actually watch. Part of it was when we were recording, we were trying to do one a week, which is a lot, right? Like trying to find 52 unique and interesting people a year to talk. It's a lot. So we went in with a realistic idea here of, hey, we're going to do 12, but they're going to be 12 high level, right? Like interesting talks yourself, Shockey, Governor Nome / Secretary Nome now, like on her moose hunt, Ivan Carter, like Will Primos, like nice. These guys are going to be high, like try to keep it really high end, really interesting. And like we've done here, right? Like I think the most interesting part that we've talked about today is how you've grown your business, right? Like that's been the most interesting that I think, because you talk about hunting all the time, right? Oh, I want to dig a little bit past that, and like you've made it in the industry, and let's just not talk about the highlights. Like, what are the struggles you've had with your business? Like, where do you see it? Like, I think that'll be, people are going to tune into that and be like, holy smokes, yeah, Chris is a heck of an archery shop, but he's running his business. Like, he's got the same learning curve, everything else that everybody in real life has of, if I'm going to go and have a grocery store, right? Like, I've got all these learning curves. Like, you probably looked into health insurance now. When you were 20, did you ever think you'd be studying health insurance policies of what's best? Absolutely not. I can't tell you how much time I've spent on health insurance stuff for employees or packages or all this other stuff that, like, nobody sees that on the outside, but that's reality of running a business. It doesn't matter if it's in the hunting industry or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, I think that just goes back to like, it's the fantasy of just going out and hunting, but there's so much that the foundation of the business side of things has to be so well oiled and there and set up correctly to really for long-term success. And I think I joke around with it, but it's like the hunting space, and everyone you got, it's just like, I just want to go hunting and sit out back on a tree stand. And it's like, if you can be smart and strategical in a way and find a business opportunity in this space, I think you can go really fast and pretty far if you're very smart about it and strategical. And I think luckily, I've been able to do that and find the right people, find the right mentors. I think having a right mentor is super important too.
Right.
I've had several in my life that outside the industry, just to be able to relate and ask questions and how do you do this or what do you do that? I think that is so important. I feel like I've gone so fast and have been able to bounce ideas or ask for advice or anything like that off of a good, successful mentor, someone that you would want to be, in a business relationship or whatever one day. There's so much going on. I really do geek out about the business side of things. I think that I really appreciate that you bringing up some of this stuff, because it's like it's my everyday. I mean, I have calls all day long. I'm sitting in front of this laptop until probably all day long, just on calls.
Yep.
And it's like, you just don't think viewers and everyone just don't think of that. But it's like, there's so much that is involved. I mean, partners and, buying product and all, net 30 terms, and packaging and like all these things that is just like, reviewing email ads and all the above. I mean, there's so many things that go into everything we have going on that is literally a 9 to 5, way more than a 9 to 5, but every single day, keep it going.
Yep. Now, have you on social media, have you guys been restricted on anything that you guys have done? Have you hit any of those yet?
So we've been pretty fortunate. We don't have too many restrictions going on. I think on my Instagram, there's some things where it's like you cannot be viewed outside of your followers. That's happened. That's been like in place and has been reversed several times. I know that if I post a photo with like a dead animal, that post definitely does not get shown outside of my followers. Like that's restricted. I think that since we are mainly archery related, we kind of loophole a lot of that since we don't have, firearms and stuff like that. A lot of times, sometimes we do. YouTube wise, we've been very clean on that. I think again, mostly because of archery related. We're not heavy on the firearm side of things. I know a lot of guys that have been struggling with that. However, I think that my approach to it, or when I talk to people about it, it's like they just love to dwell on it. They're like, oh, the world's against me. You know, we can't grow. You know, we're doing poorly because we're shadow banned. You know, and it's just like I just try to keep all that blocked out, even if it's a reality. It's like what we can do right here in front of us is make good content, and we can post it, and we can do everything that we can do. And we maybe are affected by it sometimes, but I feel like you really get yourself into some trouble if you dwell on it too much, and then you just start, then you're not passionate about it enough, and you're not, you know, you don't have like, you're like, we're just going to get shadow banned if we post it. It's, you know, we can't grow, we can't do all this. So I haven't been ignoring it, but I just am not taking it seriously or taking it too, you know, too personally, and just paying attention to things that are in my control, because something like that really is not in our control, unfortunately. Of course, with the new administration, everything they have going on, I'm very thankful and hopeful that some things maybe get massaged around, Elon getting in and everything like that. With X, you know, and everything, I think that there is good potential that some things will, you know, have a sunny side at the end of it. But yeah, it's all interesting, man. It's a weird world.
I've been putting time out for like the last year on Instagram. So we're going through and trying it. So now we're like, we won't post a gun on Instagram because they instantly get flagged, right? And you're out for a long time. So we won't post a gun there, but then you can, like, we just started an X account, right? Like I was never on Twitter before, but now that Elon's got X and it's kind of, right, it's more open. You can share anything that's legal. So I can post a gun over there. You can post a gun on Facebook of all things, even though Instagram and Facebook are tied. Like the Facebook doesn't get hit like Instagram does. So like the same, right? You just got to keep going, keep playing. The algorithms change every single day. You got to figure out what that is. But no, it's interesting talking to people in the industry how they handle like that, because if you look at a lot of them, like nobody's grown over the last year, right? Like everybody's kind of stayed there, but it's then all of a sudden you'll get out of jail and you got 10 days. Like how can you perform over that 10 days where you get put back in jail?
Yeah, I don't know. I just try not to, because it can eat at you. You know, all these things can eat at you. So it's just like you kind of got to put the blinders on sometimes and just focus on the things that you can control, and just, you know, just hope for the best, almost sort of deal. But control what you can control, and that's all that you can really do. So just focus all your attention at that. Yeah.
Well, man, thanks for coming on today. Anybody that's watching, make sure we're going to have the sweepstakes coming up with Chris B. Going to hunt in Alberta, first part of September. That one's going to be awesome. Chris, let everybody know about your website, where to check all your stuff out too.
Yeah, check me out on YouTube, Chris B, and then our website, Be Real Custom. We got a bunch of stuff on there.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks. Hopefully, thanks for being the guinea pig on this. First one with the new podcast set up. Lee's shaking his head. It looks like it went okay, Lee. Oh, you gave a side head nod. I don't know if that, But no, I'm looking forward to sharing this edit with you.
Yeah, love the setup, and you're going to crush, man. It's going to be good.
Perfect. Thanks, man. I'll get back to it.